This computer, yes. So let's see if I overwhelm my internet service here. Let me stop my video so you don't get confused of who's talking. There.
Thank you, Roger, for making it better always for us.
Well, I want to be able to do this for other events too, because until Zoom allows the cloud recording to change, like you can do it locally. I don't. If everybody knows what I'm talking about, when you're looking at a Zoom and somebody's presenting, there's a screen, and then there's a person talking, but sometimes it's just a little thumbnail, or maybe it's a list of the other participants. But there's a slider bar in between that you can make one bigger or smaller. So if you want to zoom in on the people, you slide it one way. And if you want to zoom in on the presentation, you slide it the other way. And normally that doesn't get recorded like that. You have to have the ability to do local recording. That's what I'm doing over on this computer. So right now I just have gallery view on, and I recommend that for everybody. That's on my computer. It's the upper right. You click views, and you can do speaker view, gallery view. I'm not sure what immersive is. I don't know if I want that. And then you have choices of hiding the non-video participants. If somebody doesn't have their video on, they won't appear on the screen. And Zoom is adding features all the time. I watched the Zoomtopia this year a week or so ago, and they were they were showing all the gadgets and things. The problem is you needed a whole staff of thing to make all these gadgets work. And right now it's just me, so bear with me. I can pass some of this off to somebody else if they want to no. Take over the local recording like I'm doing on this second computer. I feel like I need to evolve to be a chameleon with eyes that move independently. Learn how to use my left hand and work the mouse.
And pay attention to the meeting.
Oh, that too, yeah. So, Rita, I've got your presentation queued up. So you could just tell me to go next slide. I think that might be better than trying to have you share your screen too.
Yeah, I think that'll save us some time, because there's always some time when we transition from share screen. Right. So yeah, good. I talked with Bob about it yesterday. He's pretty excited.
Yeah, that's been great.
Yeah. We were, the NPR story got carried at least statewide.
Yeah.
Because Bob's daughter heard it through CMU.
Yeah, I saw it there too.
I'll tell you the truth. Lester Graham talked to me I talked maybe 2, max 3 minutes, and he talked 2 minutes. And then he said, okay, that's it. It's going to be a short story. And there's so much more I wanted to say.
Yeah, of course.
I would have put a few more nuances in, but still I thought the piece he wrote was good. So it's accomplishing the purpose.
Good.
So yeah, great. It's hard to explain what's going on in any news story. When I was interviewed at Channel 7, we talked for 2 hours and it was a 5-minute bit.
Well, at least you got 5 minutes. You know who I really like is this Dr. Jha, who's the new COVID coordinator. That man gets his message across so fast and so clearly and so well. He's like my idol. If I could just talk to the press the way he does.
Take notes.
Yeah, I watched him on ABC News before he got this position.
Well, this is a quarterly meeting. I expect a whole bunch more people coming on.
Well, and while there's a lull, Morgan Asunkin, if I could introduce her, she's a U of M master's student in environmental health promotion and policy. with, hang on, let me admit a couple people, with a focus on water quality management and policy. So thank you for attending, Morgan.
Hi, Beth.
Hi, Anne. Hi, Jack, Vince.
So Anne, are you ready to take over being secretary one of these months?
Cricket, cricket. Anytime.
There are a lot of shy people on the screen. Or not on the screen.
Internet issues.
Well, I would say I'm very grateful, Beth, and I do think, though, it's for all we do, and I do think it's, we should be moving towards a replacement. And saying that, I got to say, I hate being secretary. I hate taking notes, which doesn't help the situation. But
well, and I don't really take notes during, I do admit people and take attendance. And then I just watch the YouTube recording in the next couple weeks. And it's kind of nice. Then I digest it all again. And
yeah, I think you have more patience than me.
Yeah, and if you have the transcript up when you're watching it, of course, it pretty much tells what's going on. A lot of times it can't understand certain words. Like it never understands what Scio means.
Yeah, those transcripts are very handy.
people are still joining.
I see some new names on here. I think my Zoom allows 40 people at a time to be shown on the screen. And if there's more than that, then you have to use the arrow to see the next set. Well, while a few more people are coming on, I'm going to make sure my screen share works. I'm going to step through, make sure my images come across okay. So if you're on gallery view, you should be able to see what I'm sharing on normal PC. It's on the left side, and then the gallery view would be on the right. If you don't want to see everybody else, you can change it to speaker view and you just see who's talking. And so I've got the agenda, I've got the minutes, I've got the map that was shared, I've got my Google Earth active, ready to go. I've got Rita's PowerPoint. I've got some other images and I've got some data about the surface water sampling that I've done a summary of that's better than what I've got another whole set of things over here for when I wrap up the meeting with my chair notes and various images that I'm going to be showing. And then what else have I got? Here are all the different entities that should be involved in interchanging information with CARD and the SRSW website. And then the details of the two articles with their images. And of course the Zoom meeting. So let me go back to the agenda. Oops, what happened to my agenda? Oh, here it is. Oh, I got put on a separate slide. Okay. Yeah, so a lot going on. Let me stop share for a moment. see how many people you got. Pretty much everybody we expect on already.
Roger, this is Mike. I sent you earlier this morning a graphic regarding some comments I'll be making about the Ann Arbor Township test.
Okay, let me see if I have.
Shows the well location.
Early this morning. You sent it to my home.
Yeah. RM Rayle.
Huh. Forums.
And to Jack and to Beth also.
Huh.
So I thought one of you might want to put it up.
So why don't we start the meeting and you can look for that email in the background while we
It's
approve
not there.
minutes and such.
You
Okay.
might want to send it to the SRSW or card address. I don't know why some of my emails have been.
Well, it should go, it had been to Beth, to RDH.
Beth, did you get it?
And also to Jack.
I got just the press release yesterday.
Yesterday, but this morning before the meeting.
Oh,
Okay, let me
Yeah,
see.
I didn't get it either.
Okay.
I'm not seeing it either.
Hey, check
Okay.
and see if it's in your drafts. You
Yeah.
know, I do that so often.
I do it. Yeah, I know I do it too, but
Yeah, sometimes if you sign off before it's actually sent, then you'll see it. You open another device and say, "Wait a minute, I know I sent that already." All right, so let's go ahead and start the meeting. So I'm Roger Rayle. I'm chair of CARD and chair of Resident for Safe Water, and I'm in my 30th year as a citizen volunteer. Watching over this site, I'm going to share my screen and say a couple words. So here's the agenda for the meeting. All of these meetings are recorded and then later posted to YouTube. If you don't want something in the recording, I guess you need to let me know, or it's hard to turn off recording and turn it back on because I'm actually recording on 2 devices today. So we might be able to edit it out later, but what you say will be recorded unless you make prior arrangements. If you're first on the screen when you're talking and you're new, well, even if you're not new, because there's some new people on the screen, if you would, the first time you talk, introduce yourself. Some people introduced themselves earlier before everybody got on, but not everybody heard the introduction. So it's good that we know everybody. And if you do talk, of course, turn on your screen so we can see you. I recommend that people use gallery mode to see all the people on the screen, and keep that on when I'm share screen so you can see who else might be raising their hand or that. And I'm going to try to work all this stuff as other people take over the meeting. And that would I'm going to turn it over to Jack, and he's our executive director, and he's going to, well, first I guess I'll turn it over to Beth because we have to do this one step of approving the October.
thanks,
Really should
Roger.
be November, shouldn't it? Shouldn't this be November minutes?
You're right, the November minutes.
Yeah. And of course, I'm on this is a PDF, so I can't change the PDF right here.
I can change it in the live
Yeah, we'll change
meeting
it
one.
in the version, but that's not going to change the minutes.
No, today we're approving the November minutes. And my name's Beth Collins. I'm the CARD secretary. If any of you are not already on the email lists, please private message me or direct message me in the chat, your email, if you'd like to be added to the email list. And anyway, do I have a board member who would like to make a motion to approve the November minutes?
I move to approve the November minutes.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks, Beth.
Hey, you're welcome. Now, Jack.
Thank you. I'm Jack Eaton. I'm the Executive Director of CARD. Two quick things before we dive into the old business. First, Kathy Knol let me know that she will not be attending today. She has made arrangements that we could meet at the Township Hall in April, May, and June. If we so decide, we'll decide that at the end of this meeting. The second thing, I want to turn this over to Mike. Mike has some breaking news that is a little alarming, and so go ahead, Mike.
Okay, I just resent, well, actually, I sent it as the two drafts. I mean, it's a document to EPA, and it has the two screens that I wanted to show you. So basically, Ann Arbor Township, given the rather disturbing list of results from Scio Township, in October, we looked to do some additional testing in Ann Arbor Township. You may remember that I think it was about 2 years ago, we did some testing for both PFAS and 1,4-dioxane and got non-detects in all the areas that we looked in. So the board elected to resample a number of the places that we had sampled in the year in that one, and to add a few additional ones, generally in the Blueberry area over by Skyline High School, and also around Newport. Samples were taken on October 15th, and because it was, well, let's say things were crowded in the labs and then GHD that we were using to prepare for these, and they were finally not returned to us. They were actually tested on the 24th of October and then sent to us on the 28th. The very disturbing surprise that at one Blueberry residence, we found 9.1 ppb, which, as you all know, is over the drinking water limits by a significant amount. Given that, and given the fact that the house immediately next door tested non-detect and we got other non-detects, we knew that we needed to reconfirm the finding of 1,4-dioxane. So we contacted basically the county and the state and advised them of what we had found. We both the state, well, I guess through the county, but the state decided to run a test there, and we worked at getting our second test scheduled for confirmation. The state test came back non-detect. Our test, which we sent, I'm not sure exactly what day the state test was taken, but ours was taken and on the November 14th, I think it is. It was received by the lab on the 17th, was analyzed on the 21st, and results were sent out on the 22nd, and it showed 1.9 parts per billion. So again, it was positive for 1,4-dioxane, but at a lower level. In communications with the homeowner and the state and county, and a few others, we have scheduled for this afternoon, I think it's late afternoon, early evening, to have a split sample testing arranged with the state and our own use of the 522 sample. So those will be taken, and then we'll get maybe some information that will help us address this issue of 522 versus the other tests, 8260 or whatever number it is. But that's was very disturbing. The location of the plume is on the document I just sent to you guys, I think. One out to you. Yeah, there's two documents there. One is a well location. That's the tests.
What I got here are two PDFs of the sample details, no map or anything.
No, for Christ's sake. Well, sorry about that. It looked to be, it was sent, looking, 2 attachments scanned by Gmail, it says down. Oh, but you're right, it's 2 of those. That's very weird.
See, I already had those.
Yeah. Well, at this point, I guess I can't help you much unless I can get it. I don't know, Dan, if you can send it, that might be helpful.
Roger, what Mike is sending, and I think you probably have it if you have the 2 attachments, is the body of the email that was sent to US EPA, is what
Yeah,
Mike
let me,
wants to work off of.
Find that.
And that has 2 figures in it, not attachments, but.
Oh,
in
is
the
that why it
email.
looks like that as the description? Okay.
Yeah, it's in the email, Roger, that you have.
Except that we don't have that, the email that I sent, Dan, doesn't have the actual report. So I'm not sure why it's coming up like that.
Yeah, I don't know, but what was
It's
sent.
just a short summary with the two documents.
What Roger does have, because we chatted yesterday, is the email that Ann Arbor Charter Township had sent to US EPA.
Right.
And it includes those 2 attachments, which are lab reports. But in the body, it includes the figures showing where this well is, as well as showing the overall topography and ravines. Which is what I think.
There you go. There's one of them. Right. So that's the location. You can see it's pretty scary in terms of its relationship to Barton Pond and how significantly, and this is the other one. This one shows some test areas that we're proposing for locations of future testing. But you can
Yeah,
see
so
the
what-
Scio, yeah, see the
These are
Scio
the
wells over
Scio
there. Yeah,
samples and their hits. They only we only have the hit on that one Blueberry Lane.
yep, that's the only one we got. All the other tests we ran were non-detect.
Right.
And
I haven't
remember-
mapped those yet.
And remember, we only sampled 11 wells.
11 altogether,
Yeah,
yes.
in the area was between Maple and Huron River Drive by Barton Pond. So you can see it's a very large area to only sample 11 residential wells.
Yeah. And if we look at that on Google Earth, we can see all the, and we can actually bring up the other Ann Arbor Township wells that are there. Here's all the wells in that area.
So
So
Mike, you
there's-
might want to remind people what the EPA number is and the environmental working group number for drinking water.
Well, you mean 7.2 is the state level, right?
EPA recommends 0.3
Yeah,
and environmental working group advises EPA is 0.35. Environmental working group is 0.3 part per billion.
I should say also that because of the next door coming out the way it did as non-detect and such, Dan suggested, and we had the confirmation test also look for a wide array of VOCs, which all came out non-detect.
Yeah, so that would please indicate that because we didn't find any chlorinated solvents, the dioxane is related to Gelman. As you know, Gelman, is related to the Gelman dioxane plume. As you all know, chlorinated solvents like trichloroethylene and such have a contaminant of dioxane in them. And because we did not find any of the VOCs, chlorinated solvents in that well, it indicates that it's not related to a chlorinated solvent spill, but related to Gelman's dioxane plume. The location was 1.25 miles, as you can see in the figure, from where the thought to be boundary is. And similarly with Scio Township, it was up to 1 mile from where the thought to be boundary is. So it's very similar to what we're seeing in Scio Township, what we're starting to see in Ann Arbor Charter Township.
I will also interject that the depth of this well is not quite as deep as some of these hits on Scio. So this may be an intermediate level that, so it might not be the same. This tends to be deeper, a lot deeper than the river, where this one is not so deep. So this one could actually enter the river sooner, where these might meander along the river. If it gets to the river, it might meander and come up in Barton Pond. This
Yeah.
one might come up even sooner.
Yes, the recent test is 110 feet.
Right. And this is quite high elevation here.
So we have some hands up. Why don't we take some questions here? Go ahead, Beth.
Well, I just, I mean, are we, any of us really surprised? And then now what happens next? Like, we just keep watching, we just keep testing more homeowner wells and.
Well, we're going to be certainly doing some more testing in the areas that are indicated. I hope that this will move us along to the notion that we need to be doing method 522. I don't know, but I think that given the states, that's why we've now worked with the state now to schedule a split sample at this house. And I think the plans are to take one from the front, one from the back, and one inside the house. So maybe we can get somewhere to.
Nothing ever happens. Like what, I mean, help EPA now or what? I mean.
Well, that's why we sent it now to the, yeah. The concern, all of this rush here at the end was caused by two problems, really. One is even to get our first samples analyzed, we had some significant delays because seemed like everybody wanted to use the labs here at the end of the year. And then when we got them back, there was the whole problem of rescheduling and doing that. And so we then were able to do that as well. But in the process of that, because at the last meeting, we had no update from anyone regarding what the EPA was up to. We found that the EPA, we contacted them and found that the EPA was in fact saying that they were done with the collecting of the materials, wasn't going to start scoring. So because of that, we thought this was so significant in the ongoing thing, even though we hadn't finished all of the like the split sample that we had wanted to do. We thought we'd need it to let them know immediately. And so we did that. And today is when the split samples will be done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Rita.
Unmute.
Sorry, I did. I just had a question. So our comment with a question. So these residential well new detections, they're not only beyond the currently known boundary of contamination, but aren't they also beyond the regulated area as determined by the third consent judgment that now governs this remedial action?
I don't think so. I mean, what it is, so the dividing line is just to the west for Maple Road, which is our division with Scio Township. And my memory of the east area, or if that's what it was called, remediation, this would require them under CJ3. Oh yeah, I think the problem there is that at the level that they are, even at 7.2, you're right, they wouldn't be required to take any actions, I think.
Yeah.
I think remediation would come at a higher level.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
Rita, this is Dan. There is no boundary to the responsibility underneath the consent judgment for Gelman to take action. It is outside of the prohibition zone, which you may be thinking about. And it's quite a distance from the prohibition zone. But we're dealing with two programs here. We're dealing with the state drinking water program, and we're dealing with the agreement that Gelman and the state have, which are two distinctly different things. Gelman is responsible underneath the consent judgment to do some things, but the state drinking water program, separate from that, is responsible for doing things as well. So we're not hooked into what is required of Gelman and dependent upon Gelman, because we're also into the drinking water program requirements.
Okay, thank you. Hannah?
Sorry, thank you so much. Hannah Northey with E&E News. I had introduced myself earlier, but just for those who didn't hear. Can you just explain to me, so were the samples that CARD took sent to the state and then they analyzed those results and they found it to be a lower level? Is that what happened?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry.
What happened is that, well, none of these were taken by CARD per se. It was Ann Arbor Township. The board, because they said, because of what we had seen in Scio Township and the direction that seemed to clearly indicate to us, Ann Arbor Township decided to resample some they had done the year before, 2 years before, and to add some additional ones in the general area that we've been talking about. So I'm not sure exactly what your question is. So that was the township sample. Then when we notified the county and state, when we got 9.1, they took a sample. And we also had taken one for confirmation. I can't remember if those were not on the same day, but they were very close together.
Yeah, they were on the same day within.
Oh, were they?
hours of-
Okay, great.
within
Thanks,
hours
Dan.
of each other, Michael.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So the county and state did their own sampling. They took their own sample.
That's correct.
Okay.
So to explain that kind of more clearly, the state and the polluter are really not doing enough testing to the north. And so Scio Township has taken it upon themselves to do drinking water well testing. And now Ann Arbor Township has resumed its practice of testing certain wells. What we're finding is that the state isn't doing a good job of monitoring this. And so local governments are having to step in and make sure that we're actually trying to define the contours of this plume more clearly.
Okay, thank you so much. And my other question was simply, what have you heard from EPA and what are you asking EPA to do? And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Well, we didn't talk to them specifically about this. We sent them the information, the test results that we have. And what we heard from them was that they had completed their collection of materials in order to do their scoring. Obviously, it did not contain this, so we sent it to them.
Okay. Go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, my concern is these are residential water supply wells, and that it's real important to sample from a public health standpoint, but they're not necessarily the best wells to define the plume.
That's right.
So the plume, this is really concerning because the plume could be much bigger than what just these isolated results show, unless it's just a strange fluke.
Well, that's exactly what we expect to find ultimately. This was a canary in the mine.
But there's no monitor wells in
very,
this.
very bad sign.
Yeah, it is. There's no monitor wells in this area that are screened at the right levels or installed using vertical aquifer sampling. So it's pretty concerning. I also have a side question about that stormwater detention pond behind Wines School. I wonder if that's ever been sampled.
We have not tested it.
I'm not sure that anyone has tested that. That's within the city, I believe. So.
You're talking about this area right here?
Yes.
Behind Wines?
Yeah.
I understand that's related to the city's water treatment system. I think that's where they put some of the water to settle out after it's cleaned, or maybe it's the lime or something goes in there. I don't know the whole story of that, but
You are correct, Roger. That's the surface impoundment for the water treatment plant where they put their, if you will, sludge after the water treatment process.
Okay.
yeah. And it probably has been tested, but I haven't seen any data. We don't get all the testing results in database form from the city, and eventually we need to incorporate all that kind of stuff for the long term.
Right. Go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah, a follow-up question. Since we first mentioned that we found dioxane in the well on Blueberry Lane, it seems like we're just randomly testing based on where a residential well exists and at the depth of the residential well. And so what can we do to request sort of a systematic way of testing? We're definitely not testing in the optimal locations to make decisions and determine the spread of the plume. I mean, that's my take on it. I'm not an expert, but it seems like we need monitoring wells in strategic locations so we know what's happening.
I think that's exactly it. And that was one of the major factors that resulted in Ann Arbor Township's Board of Trustees in 2016 passing a resolution requesting that the EPA get involved. The state hasn't done it. There's never been a real evaluation to make the kind of initial decisions that need to be made about a plan of all of these wells. And so as Jack said, we seem to be taking it on ourselves.
Okay. Is
And
there
also-
any advantage, given that we have a new director of EGLE, would it help to restate our request and be very specific in what we want tested and where?
Well, I guess I can't really answer that question. Maybe the state can help you answer that one.
You
Oh,
know,
okay.
Kathy, yeah, hi, Kathy, Dan. You know, it seems like what you're going towards is the appellate court rejected the remedial 2022 remedial consent order and asked that if the state has a request of Gelman to do additional work, they need to trigger the dispute resolution clause. And I think it goes to your point that one of the things that the state should be doing in its dispute resolution clause of the current consent order, consent judgment, is asking that a more proper set of groundwater monitoring wells be installed to delineate the extent and magnitude of this contamination.
Oh, okay. I agree. And I do want to state that I believe that EGLE is doing more than what the courts have required. And so I don't want to be critical of EGLE at this time, but I think that we need to ask them, or either ask them for some specific testing or ask them to EGLE to develop a plan for testing that will give us the answers we need.
Okay.
I think that would be helpful, but as I said, if this turns out that using the method they use shows non-detect and our method shows 1.9 on the same day, we need to do more than just schedule the locations. We need to come up with a resolution from the state and county and whoever that 522, the EPA recommended method for testing for 1,4-dioxane be used in the further future tests.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And I don't mind taking an action item to contact a couple of people on the county commission. In fact, Yusuf Rabi is returning. He should be able to take this action item. And let's get a resolution and let's get it passed and see what we can do politically, given, I mean, we have Democrats representing all of Washtenaw County. We should be able to get these things done in months, not years.
So I want to note that we're half an hour into a meeting that we really haven't started yet. I'm going to call on Vince, and then I'm going to try to move back into the agenda.
Yeah, thank you. Vince Crusoe, board member of CARD. I think people need to know that we're spending a tremendous amount of money locally, even though we're paying taxes to the state government. Our townships and the city are spending large amounts of money on these tests because the state can't do them or won't do them. So it's sad to see all this money being spent, but it's obviously necessary currently.
Thank you, Vince. I would just note that the testing done by Scio and by Ann Arbor Township and the wells that are being put in by the city of Ann Arbor are going to demonstrate that the fourth amended consent judgment was fundamentally flawed because it didn't require any testing in this area, any monitoring wells. And this just emphasizes the importance of bringing in the EPA. With that thought in mind, I'm going to move on to the old business portion of the agenda. The first thing is the request for information from the polluter by Eagle. Is there any update on that, Dan?
No, there is no change on that. I'm Dan Hamel. I'm the Eagle project manager for the Gelman site. I'm in the Jackson district office. There is no update on, again, we are still bound by a confidentiality agreement. So there is no update about getting data that, the interveners have also seen. That data, is been viewed. It's not been hidden, but there is no update on getting it released to the public.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to really try to move this along because we are so deep into this meeting without having accomplished all of that. So is there an update on the MS4 permit violation?
Roger, can you let me share? Share screen. I have some, that will help in some of my
I just made
update.
you a co-host.
Okay, so I can share.
You need to accept that, and then you should be able to share.
Okay.
Roger's got to stop sharing his screen before you can share yours.
How do I accept?
You're a co-host. You should be able to do it now. Just
okay. So let's see here. Screen 2. Okay. Are you seeing a letter?
yes.
Okay. As far as the B, the update on MS4 and GSI work plan, as I've stated in last couple CARD meetings, we have separated those two issues as far as what Eagle is, how Eagle is pursuing those. The Eagle Jackson District RRD is pursuing the GSI portion of that question and that request. And then Eagle and Washtenaw County Water Resources Commissioner is pursuing the MS4. As far as the GSI, we have 2 areas of GSI that were in the western area and the eastern area. The latest update is we have submitted, or there have been work plans in both areas given to Eagle by Gelman. We have reviewed the western area, and they have started some sampling in the western area related to GSI. They will continue that this winter as it freezes to get better access into where the wetland areas that we want them to sample. And then in the eastern area, they submitted a work plan related in the Allen Creek drain area.
Excuse me, Dan. Are we supposed to be seeing where you're talking about on your share?
No, all I'm doing is what is up is the latest is we've submitted to them basically a response to their eastern area work plan, Allen Drain Eastern Area GSI work plan. So what you have here is we sent a letter back to them and identified there's some insufficient information, requesting that we listed what that is, what that information is where it's insufficient, and then asking them to modify and add to their current work plan and resubmit. So that was done here in November. We have not heard a response. This letter will be posted here in the near future on the webpage, but that's the latest as far as GSI and the Allen Drain area, the GSI in the eastern area of the Gelman site in the Allen Drain area. So we have done a response and are waiting for them to submit a revised work plan. And the MS4, like I said, the Eagle Water Resources Division and Washtenaw County Water Resources Commissioner are working together to engage with Gelman and identify what the requirements to meet the MS4 obligations. I don't have any more detail than that. That's a different division.
Thank you so much. Any questions on this? Moving along. Patti, do you have any updates on the Sentinel well program?
I do. The wells are installed. So in November, we went out and did an exploratory borehole to bedrock in Garden Homes Park. That's basically east, sort of northeast of the Maple Miller intersection.
Excuse me, hold on a second. Dan, if you're not gonna
Well, I'm gonna need some for the future. So how do I get off of here, Roger?
If you stop
sharing.
sharing, you won't lose your status as a
And
co-host.
then I can go back to the agenda and keep people up to date. on
Okay,
where
I
we are.
am at a loss here. Why isn't it, it's not showing where to stop
I'm
share.
gonna stop you.
Okay. Please do. I'm not used to Zoom.
Yeah. And then you should be seeing back to the agenda. So we just
Yes.
went over B and C, I think, or B. And now we're on C with Patti. I'm sorry, Patti, go ahead.
It's okay. So we did an exploratory borehole in Garden Homes Park to bedrock and completed vertical aquifer sampling along the way. The borehole depth was about 275 feet. And I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but there were basically 2 aquifers about 20 feet in thickness. And we set 2 wells. So there's a well that's shallower, screened about 142 to 147 feet, with that being the bottom depth. And then the deeper one is screened 209 to 214, that being the deeper depth, also 214. So I don't have bore logs together for that yet. When I do, I'll make them available.
So thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I guess I should say all the vertical aquifer sampling indicated no detections. The wells have been developed, but they haven't been sampled. So we'll get that on the schedule here in the next month.
So just for purposes of clarity, can you tell us which testing method the city is using?
Yeah, method 522.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
And as a clarity, the taxpayers paid for this, not the polluter. Thanks, Patti.
So then item D is the Superfund designation update. Joel's here from the Congresswoman's office. Did you want to speak on this?
Yeah, if anyone, I don't see anyone from EPA, so if they want to jump in, feel free. I don't have anything major this month. Just to say that Mrs. Dingell continues to meet regularly with the Region 5 director, continues to discuss this. And just to remind everyone that they're welcome to reach out at any point, share thoughts, share updates, and we are always available.
Thank you so much. And I don't see anybody from EPA either, so I'm going to call on Dan. You're mute.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jack. In discussions recently with US EPA, as Mike indicated, they've finished investigation steps, collecting all the data. The data is in the process of being qualified. And their next step is to update their hazardous ranking score, which they did back in 2017. And if the hazardous ranking score indicates that the Gelman site does present an imminent substantial endangerment, they will then put in the Federal Register their intent to make it into a US EPA National Priorities List Superfund site. So they're, again, hopefully, by the end of the year, going to be able to make a determination on whether this should be a US EPA Superfund site or not.
And so remind me, the last time they did the analysis, this site scored high enough to go on to the next step. Is that correct?
That's correct. It scored the highest possible for groundwater, which is a score of 50. And if you look at the history, if a site has scored 50, it's one of the tops in the nation. So it is very likely that if this scores 50 again, which I expect it to, it'll be at the very high end of anything that could be proposed for a US EPA Superfund site compared to other sites.
Thank you very much. So moving on to item E, the intervenor update. It has me down there, but I have no inside information on this. Is there anybody from the township, the county, or the city that could speak to what the intervenors' plans are for their next steps? This is one of those occasions where we miss Kathy Knol. So then I'm just going to move on to the next item, which is the Scio wells. Kathy's not here for that either. North.
I had added the Ann Arbor Township one, but we already, talked about that kind of.
Yep. And the KLC property, I am unaware of any further developments on that. Again, Kathy's not here. So H is the idea of moving our meetings to in-person meetings. And so I suppose this would be a good time to discuss that. As I said, Kathy Knol contacted me, and she's made arrangements that we could meet if we want to at the Township Hall in April, May, and June. Does anybody have a strong opinion on this?
So will they be a combination in person and Zoom? Is that what we're proposing?
I'm not sure.
I think we were talking about maybe just picking one of those three to try a hybrid / in-person. And I think we had talked about not making it the quarterly, because I think we get more participation from out of town people on a Zoom, but the hybrid, of course, will have that option as well, to be there in Zoom. But I don't know, I think Roger has to take the course there at the township or the county, or
There is township staff that understands how to do a hybrid meeting. I don't think any member of this organization has received that training or has that capacity. So it'd be something we'd have to learn before we did a hybrid meeting.
I did an initial review back when they first installed the meeting, but the equipment there, but I'd have to have a refresher, and I'd certainly welcome somebody else to do that, because basically it's a technical thing. It's not a content.
Go ahead, Mike.
I think I certainly favor continuing these Zoom meetings. And if one of the problems that we have now is that we're limited to 40 people, I think we'd be well advised to move up a level on the Zoom scale, and so that we can incorporate more people. 40 seems to be adequate for most of our meetings, but if it's not, I would do that.
Michael, 40 is just the number you can see on the screen at a time.
Yeah, that's not a limit of participants. That's just how many
Okay.
Roger can see at the same time.
If we
Yeah,
get
so
more
we
than
can just go
100,
to
then we'll
speaker
do-
view then and not worry about that at all. So I prefer the electronic meetings, frankly.
So is there anybody that has a strong desire to meet in person before July of next year? Go ahead. Beth.
well, I just wanted to add, in case someone wasn't here last month or 2 months ago when we were talking about it, I think we thought that there hasn't been kind of a town hall type meeting in many years too. And if we want to reach out to some of our neighbors, especially ones that now hear about this in the news, and their neighbors' wells are contaminated and they don't understand, a lot of it, it's hard to digest. So I don't know. Unfortunately, I can't help with the organization, or I would jump in and say I could. So I'm in 70-degree weather. So that's
Just
something
rub it
you
in,
guys,
why don't you?
I can't help as being a board member. I'm kind of stuck down here. I mean, I might come up if one was planned, but for more
Is
of a.
that what happens when the weather gets up to 70? We don't know.
I heard you guys have had nice weather too, but it's
We got
really
70
nice.
degrees last month.
So hearing no strong advocate on behalf of in-person meetings at this time, I think we should plan on continuing Zoom meetings, and maybe the executive board can talk among ourselves about having a town hall meeting or having one of these meetings in person, just so that we can get together.
Yeah, I think what I kind of advocated for is just to be able to engage more of the public. It'll be a bigger venue than we can get in the normal meetings that we used to have. But it doesn't have to be a regular CARD meeting. Like Beth said, it can be a town hall type meeting, or in what I've always advocated for at some point is to have a multi-day teach-in where we can cover all the aspects of this in more depth, and let everybody know what we know from our archives and our aggregation of all the information. But that's going to be a much bigger job and would require cooperation of all the stakeholders. So Zoom is fine to continue as far as I'm concerned.
So the next item is the presentation of the two recent scientific publications. We heard about that last month. Did you have anything to add, Rita?
Yes, we have. Well, I have a very short PowerPoint, and I'm presenting this with Bob Bailey because these are two publications, one that I'm lead author on, one that Bob Bailey is lead author on. And I just want to announce, I know an email went out, but I want to announce that there are share links which are provided by the publisher and allow access to the articles without charge or having a subscription, but only until January 14th of 2023. So those share links are on the screen, and I can put them in the chat also for people. These are the two articles by name. So if we go to the next slide, the article that I am the lead author on, this article is basically a review of the situation we've gotten ourselves into, and it provides context for current concerns of exposure threats and human health consequences from possible exposure threats. Takes us through the history of the wastewater disposal, and how that contamination has spread to these exposure threats. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Bob because he's going to talk about his paper.
Which screen do you want to be on there?
That's it. That's the one.
Go ahead, Bob. You're mute.
Okay.
What I did was a pencil and paper exercise to find out, is there any risk to the public if you happen to have some of the contaminated groundwater coming into your basement? And what I discovered when I went through the calculations is that if you have a dry basement, there isn't any real issue. However, if you have a wet basement, you might need to consider doing some testing in the future. If you move to the next slide, Roger. Okay, you might want to be concerned if your basement is chronically damp and contaminated groundwater is within 10 feet of the surface. This, of course, assumes that they're actually monitoring in your neighborhood, and not simply just monitoring 60 feet below the ground, but what's actually up close to the surface. And then if you've got some dioxane there, and it looks like it's more than 150 parts per billion or so, you might want to consider doing indoor testing, or at least studying this situation further, like a shallow well in your side yard or something. So this isn't a problem for everyone in Ann Arbor, and it's likely not an issue for a few years, according to my projections of the rate of the movement of the dioxane to the east in the plume. My calculations suggest it's moving about 90 meters per year. So this is a slow moving problem, and maybe in the mid 2020s, there'll be a need to actually do some more testing in some of the homes. Any questions, comments?
You know, before we take questions, I would like to take this opportunity. I forgot to do it. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Dr. Vasilis Vasilou. Dr. Vasilou was the guest editor for the journal in which these papers are published. That is the Journal of Current Opinion in Environmental Science and Health. And this is a special issue on 1,4-dioxane. Dr. Vasilou is the chair of the Department of Environmental Health Sciences at Yale University, and he is the director of a recently funded, just funded Superfund Center on 1,4-dioxane. So that's all.
Go ahead, Doctor.
Okay, well, I'm gonna take only a couple of minutes. First of all, I really want to thank Rita for sending me the email and getting into the meeting. Unfortunately, I have to leave for another meeting very soon. However, as Rita said, we are focused on 1,4-dioxane and essentially Superfund Center. The center is based on looking at the areas of Long Island, which we have public water coming from well water and high levels. However, if I knew earlier the whole situation about Michigan, we could have included that into the initial. However, I do want to work with all of you in terms of, especially on community engagement, the town hall meetings. I'll be more than glad to get our directors of the leaders of the community engagement corps and would like to participate in any town hall meeting that you want. And I really would like to say that I would love to work with you all on this particular issue. The point with 1,4-dioxane becomes more serious, not only in the United States, but all over the world, including Germany and so on. And, a couple of months, 4 or 5 months ago, they realized also 1,4-dioxane in the rivers of New Jersey that, it feeds a lot of public water. Anyway, that's it. I'm going to listen to what you're saying. I will put my email in there, my cell phone number, and please feel free to contact me. I would like to be in touch with you all. Thank you so much.
Well, you're always welcome to join us at our meetings. And I think Beth is going to add you to the email list so that you'll get the meeting notifications. Go ahead, Vince.
Yes, I appreciate all the efforts from Yale and Dr. Vasilou. And Bob Bailey's publication is pretty significant. It's the first publication showing vapor intrusion into a home through the groundwater. These articles are also by invitation only to this journal. And this is a very widely read journal, has a very high impact rating internationally. And I appreciate all the effort of Bob and Rita. And I think it's significant. And I would also say that Ann Arbor is particularly interesting, I think, for 1,4-dioxane in that it's one of the few places that has 1,4-dioxane exposure without many other contaminants. So if you wanted to look at 1,4-dioxane health effects, this may be a great location to do that. Unfortunately for us, it's happening to us and our residents, and it's unfortunate. But it could be a tremendous scientific opportunity that you may not see anywhere else. And we have some significant amount of data of exposures, addresses over a fairly long period of time. So I think there's potential here to work with Yale and this Superfund Center. And congratulations on getting that grant. They're not easy to get, and they're very significant. So thanks so much.
Okay, go ahead and put your hand down. Seeing no further comment, I want to thank the authors as well. I think this is important work. And so moving on, I'm going to turn this over to Dan Hamel for the EGLE updates.
catch up a little bit here.
All right.
Okay, so Dan, you want to share your screen again? Let me stop sharing so you can do that. Where's my stop?
Well, that is Dan's map, isn't it?
No, this is.
Okay.
Oh, is it? Yeah, this is your. Are you sharing right now, Dan? I think I stepped on you there a minute.
Dan, you're mute.
Okay, yep,
There you
too
go.
much. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
This, as far as an update on the Gelman's remediation, as was stated previously, the response activity order that they were working under, we were working with Gelman under, has been revoked by the court. So these are the activities that have been completed this last year. These are the monitoring wells that were installed that were part of the response activity orders. The latest monitoring wells are these what were identified in the fourth amended CJ or fourth amended CJ were these Sentinel wells. And so there have been, this cluster have been finished in October. As you can see here at each of the locations, there's 2 to 3 wells per cluster. These also have been, these during installation, they were vertically profiled, and then the permanent wells have also been sampled in October. That information is on, I posted on the webpage. It's in the Gelman Access database on the webpage, so you can see the latest information. Basically the only detections that were identified up here were in the 148 area. There was detections during vertical profiling, and then those permanent wells also had the same detections of 1 to 2 parts per billion. The MW149 and MW150 for during the vertical profiling were non-detect, and the permanent wells also have been non-detect, at least the first sampling in October. Additional monitor, like I said, these are the monitoring wells that have been installed to date. The plan is, we have been engaging with Gelman, and talking to them. I've been told verbally that they are still planning on installing these monitoring wells here. They're working out the final access. They have been they do not have a final access agreements for these 2 monitoring well locations. But they are, as far as the down gradient locations of F, G, and H, they are backing off right now of scheduling those to be installed. They are part of some of the future. They are will be part of a down gradient, continuing down gradient investigation. So, but there is no dates for installation. They have kind of put those on hold for now. We have been told that they are planning to still install the extraction well in the Rose Well remediation area. Basically, they are planning on reworking a former injection well, IW2, that's in this area. They will convert that to an extraction well. They are planning, that is still being planned to be completed. The Park Lake area extraction well has been stopped. They are not planning on installing that. If you remember, the first step of that was getting a permit, NPDES permits for First Sister Lake. That permit process has been put on hold. So they are holding off doing any of that work in this area. As far as I mentioned earlier, some of the other activities that are ongoing is there's GSI investigations in the western area, which they have a work plan we've commented on, and they've done some initial sampling and are planning to do some more sampling in the we've been told in the winter here, as to be able to get into access some areas that have because of the wetness. So, and then I just earlier reviewed that there is a eastern area or Allen Drain area GSI investigation. We've just commented, sent them a comment response to that work plan. And we are waiting for a resubmittal discussion and resubmittal of the work plan based upon our comments. That's really the update of what where they were and what they are planning to do in the near future related to the activities that from the response activity order that was revoked at this time. As everybody knows, the court then has ordered that the current consent judgment is the third consent judgment is the one that is being used to regulate the site. So we will be, we have and will continue to engage Gelman to work with them to modify whatever's needed to get the current criteria, drinking water criteria of 7.2 and the current GSI criteria of 280 back into place for the Gelman site. Does anybody have any questions on the activities as far as the remediation activities? Okay. I did.
Dan, I have a question.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, can you can you tell me which one of the monitor well clusters is located near the Wells Ann Arbor installed?
The Wells Ann Arbor installed, Patti, correct me if you're still on, but are up in this area
Up there.
here.
Okay.
So these are the wells that are closest. These are not the only wells. There is other existing, there's MW 129, 121. And so there's several others, and these are newly added. By the way, Patti, I have the boring logs for this, and I was going to offer to get those to you. And, you know, in exchange, when you get your boring logs, we like to have that information to kind of exchange that. So, yeah. But these are the closest wells to the in the furthest to the north here that we have newly installed wells. And they are up in this area of the Ann Arbor wells, the two areas.
Okay.
I did have one other thing I wanted to point out. Yes, they're also part of the response activity order that was revoked was some on-site activities. Gelman has installed 2 of the 3 required extraction wells in on-site at TW25, TW24. These have been installed and they have been plumbed into their treatment system. They are currently pumping and are very high concentrations in the 2400 plus or minus range parts per billion concentration. So they are extracting groundwater at significantly impacted areas. There is a third well that was as part of the response activity order. They tried to do a test boring. They did a test boring in this location down here. The geology did not allow them, you know, there really wasn't very good water bearing zones, aquifers. So they did not install a third planned extraction well in that area. One of the other things is I had previously pointed out, they have done phytoremediation in this area. Basically, they installed their phyto trees. They have identified that some of the trees have died, and they are working or reviewing to potentially, replant those trees. But they are continuing the phytoremediation in that area. They are backing off right now of the planned phytoremediation that was part of the response activity ordered in the marshy area. They're stepping back from that and reviewing those activities. Again, the response activity order has been revoked by the court. So there, you know, it's not a requirement right now. There have, in the former burn pit area, there was proposed a heated soil vapor extraction system. They have stepped back from that right now and are reevaluating reevaluating what could be done in this area. If, as everybody knows, some of the like the tower and some of the utilities have already been removed of this area. But with the response activity order being revoked, they're stepping back from that and looking at that again. So that is the on-site activities. Does anybody have any questions related to that? The next bullet under the.
I had some
Dan,
comments.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see hands. I wasn't looking. So go
Okay.
ahead. I'm sorry, Mike.
I'm just in relation to the last couple of questions that we've had here. Can you tell me, is there any specific finding that will get the state to initiate the dispute resolution process regarding the Ann Arbor Township findings?
You mean basically asking Gelman to do additional? I'm not quite sure I understand.
Yes, that's it. Exactly. To do some additional studies that would incorporate this finding over the drinking water level, at least to date.
We are, because of the response activity order being revoked, we initiated contact with Gelman to okay, where are we going from here? So we're in, negotiations or confidential negotiations right now as part of that. I really can't identify the specific items that we're in discussions with. So, but
I wasn't really asking what items you were in discussion with. I was asking what finding would get you to initiate the dispute resolution process.
Yeah, Dan, I can take this one if you want.
Yep, please do.
So this is Josh Moser, Assistant Division Director for RRD. So yeah, we're in a, as you may imagine, we're in a very awkward position right now with the consent order being revoked. That puts us back, as people has already mentioned, to the third amended consent judgment, which has an 85 part per billion standard. That basically dictates when Gelman's required to take action. And so while Mr. McCall was right, there is no limitation to where they're required to do work. Expansion of the plume is defined by those numbers. And so when we tried to negotiate Gelman's obligations based on the 7.2 standard and the 280 for GSI, there were triggers built in that if these certain wells or residential wells met these triggers, there were things they had to do as far as evaluating or providing alternate water, evaluating municipal water, evaluating work plans to pull the plume back to meet that no expansion objective. All that is kind of gone right now. And it's the 85 part per billion because the Court of Appeals determined that it was inappropriate for the judge to just order that consent order. So we're back, to that. And so we're kind of in, and then this Ann Arbor well with this detection, which we have yet to confirm an exceedance of current criteria. We had one above and one below, so we don't have another confirmation sample to show that it's above. So even with that, we're still evaluating that with respect to the plume, but we're also evaluating, what avenues we can to get Gelman voluntarily back into a consent judgment that meets today's 7.2 standard, and what additional actions we can take with the court, with our attorney general, as far as exactly what you said, is dispute resolution the correct process? What would trigger a dispute lawfully under the consent order? And what is the best avenue for a legal route? We don't have it all figured out yet. This is all kind of came to a head all at the same time. But we're trying to work that, but you have to understand that right now, the 85 parts per billion is what dictates action out there. Unless we go back in front of the court, and obviously the Court of Appeals had determined that the judge had done some things inappropriately under the court rules. So we're trying to figure out what the appropriate route is. Because it sets back, obviously, several years. So we don't know exactly what the exact trigger may be. We're trying to figure that out.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Vince.
Yeah, I would just like to say I'm concerned about the basement exposure issues. West Park was at 49 part per billion recently. We've had a dry spell, so there's there has been a reduction in groundwater flow. So the numbers did go down. And just looking like at Six Sisters Lake is at 90 part per billion. Latest sampling, it's a Saginaw Forest, and there's lots of homes going in that area, and 90 is not that far from 150 part per billion, which Bob Bailey calculated. So I think we need to try and get some handle on this and get some control before we have homeowners exposed in Scio Township or in Ann Arbor with wet basements, which are very common in Ann Arbor on the west side. A lot of groundwater. We have Bath Street, we have Fountain Street. It's called Water Hill for a reason, just west of West Park. So it's a real concern of ours now that we have a peer-reviewed article showing 150 part per billion percolating in your basement could be a very serious problem for homeowners, both Ann Arbor Township, Scio Township, and Ann Arbor. I don't think we should take that too lightly. So thanks.
Thank you, Vince. Go ahead, Roger.
So I would just remind people again that there was secret sampling done around 2016 or 2017 of Gelman's dioxane in our waters of the state and the soils around the site that we still do not have public access to. Those were the basis for the fourth consent judgment proposal that all the local units found to be inadequate. And that's why the judge wanted to hear from those people at that hearing. The Court of Appeals, of course, said you can't do things like that because it wasn't according to Hoyle. Meanwhile, the dioxane doesn't care. The dioxane has continued to move all these 5 years, and we still don't know what the data is for the basis of these plans that were discussed 5 years ago. We still don't have that data. How absurd is this, that our laws are so weak that we can't get the data that we know exists to be able to weigh in as citizens about how, what needs to change, what needs to be done to get a handle on this. In the early days, Gelman did not want any data released to the public. And the DNR at that point said, no, not only will we were going to release this, we're going to have monthly releases of all the communications relating to the Gelman site. And over the years, with the changes in the DEQ to the DNR to the DEQ to the DNRE to EGLE, a lot of those former policies of releasing data to the public has gone away. We're at least 5 years behind some of the data. That's extra work for the company. They actually have to keep two databases, the one they release to the public and the one that they're keeping private. This is absurd. Everybody needs to know that this is not the way to do business with forever chemicals like dioxane. And if they get away with this, think of all the PFAS polluters that are out there thinking, well, this is the game plan. We don't have to actually clean up the PFASs either. We need to have due diligence here to match the scale of the problem, because this is a huge problem. And I hope the EPA can come in and correct some of these deficiencies. So I just wanted people to be aware of that there's data that would help us that we don't have access to. Thank you.
Thank you. So I see that Brian Nagel is on this call. Does he have anything that he can say about the discussions between the state and the polluter?
No, again, there are confidential settlement discussions.
So can I ask you, are you discussing the possibility of drafting a new consent judgment?
That is our target, is to
Okay.
reach a consent judgment that is between the state and Gelman that reflects the current criteria.
All right. And so I'm sure you've heard the sentiment here is that we have all this other information now about the northern migration of the plume and whatnot that might need to be addressed. With that, I'm going to go back to Dan Hamel. Did you have anything more under your section?
Yeah, you have the next bullet is the Washtenaw County Health Department and Eagle homeowner sampling. Is there a new map on that that you see?
Yep.
Yes.
This is what I always refer to as a long-term monitoring program that we do with Washtenaw County yearly. These are the areas that have been sampled over the past. These are the areas that are under the current plan, kind of the general area, general areas. In the past, we've switched back and forth every other year for some of these areas. Last year, this is where we sampled in 2022 here. So I'm calling it last year. They're done sampling. So these are the areas that were sampled last year. These were the positive detections. It's red highlighted. There was one detection here and some along Elizabeth, which we know to exist. What is proposed, again, based upon all the new information, including the Scio Township, basically the Scio Township information, is we are going to go ahead and next year's sampling is going to include these areas. Plus, we've added up in Scio Township additional areas. I don't have a good figure that shows exactly. What I have is kind of a listing of how with the Washtenaw County, how we determined the areas that we're going to sample. Again, we have talked about in the past, kind of setting areas by identifying how within 1,000 feet of some detections. So we've went through and looked at that related to the Scio Township data. And so these are the wells that are proposed to be done next year. There is a total, when you add these up, of 244 locations. Last year, as in a comparison, this year we did approximately 190 locations, 185 to 190 locations. So we are expanding that expanding that next year with a commitment to sample and evaluate and see, check what was seen in Scio Township. But that is the current plan. Just a little reworking, reiterating that we have had a significant discussion of Ann Arbor Township, recent Ann Arbor Township sampling. Just to say again that we are going to be split sampling with Ann Arbor Township and the Eagle Washtenaw County will split samples this afternoon at the residence. And we will be sending those to the Eagle Environmental Laboratory. And then Ann Arbor Township will be sending those for the method 522. So we should have additional information. There has been discussion about the discrepancy between the results. So we are going out this afternoon and take a split sample and confirm, see what if there is still continuing discrepancies between the methods. But that information will be reviewed and evaluated for any future sampling, like I said, related to our long-term monitoring program around the Gelman site.
Dan, could you go back to that list and slide down and show the rest of the addresses, please?
Sure. Okay. So this is how some of the criteria was used. And so this is the list that were are on the 2023 sampling event. That will be initiated start next April, May. with the county and Eagle. And so this is what we currently have.
And Dan, you're going to share all of your slides with me.
Yeah, Roger, I
so I
fully
can post them
anticipate
and
you've been
share with
asking that, and I will share these after the fact. I will send them like I have been to you in the past.
Thank you.
Well, could you also share that letter, Dan, that you presented earlier on the MS4?
Yes, the letter, I will give that to Roger as part of the slides, but that is also going to be posted on our webpage. It will,
Thank
I
you.
just haven't, it just has not been put up yet.
Thank you.
That will be, Roger will have a copy of it related to this meeting, and then it will eventually be on the webpage in the information database or webpage database. Let's see, do I have anything, any other figures? Nope, that's not related to the, what I do have is another bullet, the Water Resources Division, an update on the NPDES renewal. I checked with the Water Resources. They are, they are working with concerning the Water Resources Division permits people are working with the MS4 people now. And so, but I do not have any update on the renewal related, when that renewal will be available and for review by the public. And that renewal we're talking about is the renewal of the NPDES permit for the current Gelman discharge from their treatment system. So they've been working from the permit that, the previous permit, and so they are meeting those obligations under as a pump and treat groundwater. The Honey Creek, like I said, with the First Sister Lake application has been put on hold. Beth.
Yeah, while you're on that one, these surface water testing numbers that were higher in Honey Creek, have their numbers been off?
That's the next bullet.
Well, but about the NPDES, have their numbers been in check? I know you check that, right? Or
well, yeah, they are in
discharging-
compliance.
They're
in compliance with the current NPDES permit. I mean, they have to give our Water Resources group the monthly testing results. It's a daily testing result, and so that is always posted each month that I post. That is, do I have, let's see, where is this? It's gonna try to surface water sampling. Guess what? Something happened here. I'm trying to get,
Do you want me to share the map that was sent to Ryan Stanton?
yeah, that's the map that I was going to put up. I must not have.
Let me share my screen and all.
Go ahead. I will stop sharing here. I thought I had it up, and I'd have to go.
Well, there's a lot to it, and it's complicated to switch back and forth. But here,
yeah,
this should be the one you're talking about.
Yes, this is the map that we just completed the 2023 sampling. And so we generated
right.
Pardon me?
You said
2022 sampling. Right. And we generated a map, this map, to just show a comparison for the last couple of years. Right. The sampling for 2022 was completed in early November. So as some of the highlights, you mentioned some of the mentions here. This is the Allen Creek West Park area that had the Vince has identified, had a high in 2020 of 49. So the current is 37. Again, in Allen Creek Chapin, again, it has a high in 2020. It's now, it's in the range as it was the year before, at 15. One of the things that was pointed out was the third sister lake right here was
they
a
can't
sampling.
See your cursor. They can only see my cursor.
Yep. Yep. Was Third Sister Lake had a result this year of 98. So we are, as last year, it had a high result with our initial sampling in November. We went back out in December and we did it again. And as you can see, it was a 9.6. So we're evaluating potentially going out and just double checking that again this year. We haven't scheduled a date, but we're discussing it in-house here. So it's likely that we'll go ahead and do another sample. But that is one of the things that was mentioned in this meeting tonight by someone having a question about that. But really none of the other ones were significant. I call those within the range of variability that we see with surface water sampling. So, this is the information that I gave to Ryan, and he included it in his article.
This might be a good time for me to interject that that's not all the sampling, as Dan said. This is only the last couple of years, but I have this summary of the surface water sampling goes back to 2000 and what the maximums were. But again, this isn't all the data. This is just the data that's in the current database. Here's the data from EGLE and DEQ's history of surface water sampling from the 1995 data set that's not currently in the database. And of course, some of these, and again, this is parts per thousand instead of parts per.
Those are parts per million instead of parts per billion that what I was showing.
Yeah, these are, so you get 130 parts per billion in some of these surface waters. So I don't want people to think that, that we just now discovered this. No, this has been going on. It's just that some of this data has kind of been put aside or not incorporated into the current database. So
and the
to see what
current and
happens
the
over time, we need to look at all the data.
I want to point out that the GSI criteria under the current Part 201 is 280, and under the current CJ, the third amended CJ, it's 2,800. So as Josh was identifying, going back to the third CJ, the drinking water standard and the GSI standard are out of, are not protective, and we are working to bring the new standards back into place for the Gelman site. We will continue this surface water sampling at least yearly, and but this is the results for 2022.
Do you want me to stop sharing so you can share something else?
No, I don't have anything else really. That was the end of the what's new, or unless I was going to take questions right now for people.
Go ahead, Vince.
Yes, thanks, Dan. Thanks, Jack. That number in Third Sisters Lake is pretty surprising, being so high. I wonder if you could discuss, Eagle's feeling about that. Maybe the geologist could talk about why that's such a high number, given the fact that now we're looking at 150 part per billion as being problematic for homeowners. Lots of homes over there going in. There's a lot of homes there already. Thanks.
Well, Vince, we, like I said, we had a variability last year. So, as far as discussing what that 98 is, we're going to go ahead and confirm that before I would want to discuss anything about what does that mean. Again, it's going back to the notes of when it, where it was taken, when it was taken, confirm it was, that information. So, to say right now what that means is, I think, premature.
Was that a grab sample off the surface, or did you go down?
That was a grab sample off of the
surface of the lake.
Yeah, near the surface of the lake, along the western eastern edge border of the lake. We accessed it through Gelman property.
So
yeah, I took the sample right along that boardwalk area. So, I got water where I could, but it's pretty overgrown with phragmites right there. So it's not really in the lake proper. It's kind of in the wetland adjoining the lake.
So the groundwater way below that is in the hundreds of parts per billion. Or maybe Roger knows more than I.
Yeah, there's contamination in that area. In the
Pretty high
different water bearing
numbers,
zones.
pretty high numbers too.
Of high numbers. That's
Yeah.
that's the area, the Western area GSI investigation. Will be investigating that area. There's going to be borings and additional sampling done in that. Again, all our surface water samples have been grab samples just to get an idea, just, to raise some questions. If we don't understand something, we go back and confirm with additional work.
Okay. Any further comments or questions on Dan's update? Then I'm going to turn this over to Roger.
Oh, okay. Make sure that I'm unmuted and jump to my slides. Here we go. All right, so I'll just run through these rather quickly. Of course, when I drafted this, we didn't know about all the surface water summary. We didn't know about the hits on Ann Arbor Township. And I think we've covered those enough that I don't have to reiterate that. I will go back and talk about the MW 148 hit. 148 has hit at 1.1 part per billion. And again, that's where the 148, that's up here. One. From the fourth consent judgment proposal. So it's this location here. And that was the monitoring well cluster right there. That would have been the A. So this turned out to be 148, 149, and 150. That really confirms what we were seeing at Scio, is that there's some north road movement here. This one may be more associated with the hit up here on in Ann Arbor Township that may be going directly to Barton Pond in a different path. Because these ones from DuPont Circle to the northwest, tend to be gathered around these tributaries here. There is no tributary right here on the surface, but there might have been a pathway still underneath in the past, because if you look at the geology of this area, a lot happened in here as the glaciers were moving around. Let me go back to my screen. Wrong one. So there's we found some more aquifer layers in these two locations. There was a cross section made in 2017 that was presented as part of EGLE's justification for the fourth consent judgment. We don't have the full set of these, but the images that I did get of this cross section look like this to begin with, that there was aquatards in here. And this was all non-detect. Well, I plotted in here the MW 158 as best I could without having the well log. I got this data from the well database that Dan posted through October, and tried to show where the bottoms of the wells are, S and D, and then later on, a few days later, we got the samples that were done during the drilling of that. So there were just 4 samples made, 1 part per billion, 1.5, 1.4, and non-detect. Well, somehow they sampled in this area that was originally projected to be an aquatard. So clearly that's not an aquatard anymore. So this area here should probably be colored yellow when they redo this cross section. I'll also point out that there were no samples taken through these other areas where they thought there was going to, where there clearly should have been a aquifer according to their projections. There were no samples taken during the vertical sampling. So we don't know if there's any contamination in these areas because they didn't bother to sample during that. They did on 149. It's a little bit farther north than what this cross section shows, but it's close enough that we can plot it here. And again, we're having samples in an area that was presumed to be an aquitard. It's not clear whether, apparently there wasn't an aquifer down here to be sampled. So maybe this yellow area should have been depicted as being up here. So maybe this is all one aquifer here. And we'll find out because MW 130 is again the next one over. And that's already, MW 130I right here is going up. So that'll be MW 130I. Come on, 130I. There it is. So that's what's happening at 130I through 2021. We don't have the data plotted yet for 2022. So clearly there's something northward in that area too, which may be even a different pathway. So I'm just trying to give people an idea of what we know and what's not really being addressed as much as it should be. If we look at what EGLE has produced through their Rockworks modeling, this is a cross-section that's from the DuPont area. So this is actually the cross-section that's more in this area here up through this triangle area. This was how Gelman projected it, that there's an aquitard here. When EGLE did their Rockworks predicted that that's not an aquitard, that's an aquifer. So similar to what I just pointed out with what the current MW 148 and 149 shows is that there's a lot more aquifers in there than what Gelman wants us to believe. And because of that, we really need to look at that triangle area. Oops, sorry. So this area here that was left off, this parcel was not occupied. It was an old farmhouse. So it was left off all iterations of the prohibition zone. So this area here is outside the prohibition zone. And maybe because of that, when its well was capped, it wasn't sampled. It's a lost opportunity to sample what's going on at that point. Now here, we've put in extra wells in between these monitoring points. There probably should have been one here too. And that property is still unoccupied. It might be a location for a possible future purging if all of this is really heading north, as what the flow lines seem to suggest. So I just wanted people to be aware of that. Let's see what else is on my list here. Oh, that property, by the way, is 3400 Dexter and Arbor Road. It was left off the PZ, and there was a sample years ago before the well was, long before the well was plugged in, that was non-detect. So we know at one point we have a baseline that it was non-detect, but it would sure be nice to know if dioxane's in that area now, that's been spreading all these years without being detected. Before I go on, any questions so far? I would think somebody at Eagle might want to weigh in on what I found so far. Is everybody up to date on this?
I don't see any hands.
Okay. So again, the questions I have, because of these hits on Scio, and the policy in the past was that if there was a hit, we would go out another 1,000 feet and sample all the homes within 1,000 feet. So given that we had all these hits here and this hit up here, are we going to sample all the homes within 1,000 feet? Trying to get my mouse to work here. So we're within 1,000 feet of all these hits. Oops, click. We can just move this down. So we're going to sample all of this area that the circle includes. Some of these were already sampled and they were non-detect in some of them. But this is going to be a much bigger area than what Dan was showing earlier. So that's a question. Are we still going to sample within 1,000 feet of where there's been hits?
Are you asking that question of Eagle, Roger?
Yeah, you don't have to answer it now, but somebody.
I showed you what we had come up with Washtenaw County for a check next year.
Yeah, but it's not a map. I'm just saying, does that include all these areas? Is that 1,000 feet still a criteria for sampling?
Well, it's still a basis. Again, that 1,000 feet was just an arbitrary criteria, arbitrary basis that Jenny and I had come up with years ago when you had some questions on, what if we get a positive detection?
So that may not be the criteria going forward.
Well, it is. We used it partially. We used it in the generation of our proposed 2023 properties, which didn't have a map. I showed you the kind of the spreadsheet with those addresses.
I'm not saying that it should be. I'm saying that was the criteria in the past. I think there's probably better criteria to use based on which way the dioxine's heading at each of those points.
We will sample each year. We review the results and determine where to go from there.
All right, thanks, Dan. Now, if the EPA 0.35 part per billion standard were in effect using the 100 million risk over a 70-year lifetime, which Scio properties would be provided bottled water or city water? And who would pay for that? Well, as we saw, it's probably about 2/3 or half of all of these, and definitely this one, just based on today's data. So we need to start thinking about that. And even this one, when it was 9, should have gotten bottled water when it was 7.2, given the 7.2 standard, the more relaxed standard that Michigan uses, based on 1 in 100,000 risk over a 32-year lifetime exposure. Well, one other thing I didn't put on here was that as you're doing your sampling of homeowner wells, are you going to, I'm really concerned that the sampling that, after talking with Dan Knol and others, that the state's sampling method, even if it can get down to 0.5, is not going to be enough. of the wells that Scio found, the state wouldn't have found all of these using that method. Some of these are below 0.5. Now you say, well, that's way below the 7.2, but people that are living there need to know how much dioxin is in their water, and they need to make a decision of whether to feed that to their babies and things like that. So we should find out where the dioxin is, not just where it is at some arbitrary cleanup standard. I'm worried that even with the sampling using the less effective method, that there's going to be a lot of homes with dioxin that are not going to be found. Okay. We had, this is another topic. We had a CARD resolution passed to support the polluter pay action in the state. Does anybody want to speak to that on screen?
Yeah, we're going to send that to all our elected officials in Lansing and locally, and maybe the new director of Eagle, and whatever we have to do to, yeah, let everybody know how we feel.
Yeah, because as we heard earlier, we're paying for things that should have been paid for by the polluter. This is not our dioxin. This is the company's dioxin that we're having to deal with. And the more that this goes on, the more cost and risk are being passed to the citizens and the taxpayers. I wanted to make just a quick review of the CARD information infrastructure. These are the different entities involved in the Gelman cleanup. And there's information flows between various entities here. We view CARD as the central point of this because it's established by the local government stakeholders by resolution back in 2006 to be the central focus for the community. So it's important that CARD has the aggregation of the key information from all the entities. And we're seeing that happen as Ann Arbor Township and Scio Township share their data, and it eventually gets into the database. We still have to do some tweaking on websites. If somebody from the public wants to know what's going on, where do they go? Well, SRSW, Scio Residents for Safe Water, 501c3 nonprofit, provides the modicum of financial support for like doing this Zoom and keeping a lot of Google Drive files. This probably is not the best way to do this over the long-term life of the cleanup. It's probably better if CARD was fully funded. Maybe the EPA will have a hand in that. We have good information because we have CARD. We're ahead of some of the problems, and we hope to stay that way. But it's difficult when we can't get the data. Got 5-year-old data we don't have access to as CARD. Now, some of the entities, some of the stakeholders have access to that because of this confidentiality agreement that somehow never dies, never gets opened up. The public doesn't have access to that.
So Roger, we have a couple hands up. Is this a good time to take a question? We're also down to about 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. Good time.
Go ahead, Vince.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Roger. You know, we're looking at all these wells being contaminated and a lot of discussion about using Ann Arbor water to replace those wells. The mayor and his cohort proposed switching Ann Arbor to Great Lakes Water Authority. Rita Locke Caruso and Dan Bicknell were good enough to go before city council and explain how bad an idea that was. So this notion that Ann Arbor has unlimited water is not legitimate. You know, Barton Pond is only so big. So we need clean water for our residents, and we need to preserve this great aquifer that was a tremendous resource for the community and the bulwark of sustainability in Scio Township, Ann Arbor Township. So we need to move on this, and I hope EPA takes this very seriously, because we are in a really tight spot here with water resources. And unfortunately, that shouldn't be the case, but it is. So thanks.
Great. Go ahead, Rita.
So I just wanted to comment that my memory is that the EPA representative was on one of our CARD calls, and she said that there is money for citizen groups like ours. So somebody just has to write the grant. Now, I wasn't about to volunteer to do anything while I was working on those articles, but you know, this is something that maybe I could look into. And it also, you heard Dr. Vasilou from Yale say that these centers, they have what's called a community engagement core. That it's a requirement. And the community, and he said his community engagement core is ready to work with us. So we may have some resources to look into for helping with you know, organizing and doing some of the things we want to do. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'm done.
You're done? All right, let's move to, are there any non-agenda items that anyone wanted to bring forward? Seeing no hands. To remind you, our next meeting is January 3rd at 6 p.m. And with that, I want to thank everybody for attending today's meeting. And I think this was very informative today.
And good job with keeping it under an hour, 2 hours.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.
Years of experience with cats.
Thanks, Jack. Good to see everybody.
Yeah, stay well, everyone.
Enjoy the weather, Beth.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to everybody.
So if Roger and Dan could stay online, and maybe the board members, I just have one thing I want to discuss.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
I should probably stop the recording.
There you go.
Kathy, is that your grandbaby?
Kathy's mute.
He's sleeping again.
Oh,
but-
he was so cute. I could see the top of his head. I was trying